Your Excellency, Minister Chu Wenxin, and distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. Welcome you all to ICAS 2025 Annual Conference. My name is Nong. I am the Executive Director for the Institute for China American Studies based here in Washington, D.C. I really want to thank all of you for making the way to this ballroom despite the very bad weather today. I know we still have a lot of participants stuck in the traffic, and welcome you all also to those joining us online. It's truly inspiring to see such a diverse community of policy practitioners, scholars, media, and business representatives and friends gathered here today. And your presence actually sent us a very important message that the thoughtful analysis and honest dialogue actually means a lot, and still matter perhaps now than ever. Indeed, with our President Xi and President Trump's meeting today at Busan, South Korea, actually means that our conversation today is more relevant and timely. So last December, ICAS celebrated our 10th anniversary, bringing people across the Pacific to tackle tough discussion and conversation, also build understanding. So we carry the same spirit to this year's conference and staying true to the mission that guided us from the start, which is to encourage informed and constructive engagement to these very important bilateral relations. Since we last met, I think the landscape of U.S. China relations has grown more complex. So the market, the supply chain remain unsettled, competition technology keeps intensifying, and both the U.S. and China are rolling out new rules and framework from artificial intelligence to deep-sea mining that will shape the global norms for years to come. So we see the multilateral institutions already under strength, and they're being tested by competing visions of how they view the global orders, even as the challenge like climate change and global ocean governance require us to work together. So in this context, our job is to stay clear-eyed, know where we disagree and where we can actually work together to keep finding realistic ways to manage the risk while leaving space to find things to move forward. So that's exactly what today's program aims to achieve. So we're going to explore the changing architecture of great power competition or cooperation, and we'll also stick into very specific issues such as trade, technology, standard regional dynamic across Indo-Pacific and beyond. And I think as we navigate this complex issue, it's very important to look ahead to the next generation who will inherit and shape this relationship. Their perspective reminds us that engagement understanding actually must continue beyond politics and policy cycles. So one source, my understanding is, one source of real hope for the future of the U.S.-China relations lies in the work of younger generation. ICAS internship program has become an important bridge for bringing young scholars and students from both China and the United States and also other countries to experience firsthand how a policy think tank operates. Many of our former interns, we actually see a couple up here, they are now part of a growing ICAS alumni network. They have gone to earn career in academic, in government, and also in international organizations. They carry with them a very special and deep appreciation for the complexity of U.S.-China relations and the value of the continued and sustained dialogue. I think now I'm pleased that we're going to share a very short video featuring several of our former and also current interns. They are going to share how they view the future of these bilateral relations.
Hello.
Hi,
My
I'm
name
Shelby.
is
I'm a
Michelle. I am
part-time
currently
research
an
assistant
intern at
ICAS.
ICAS.
The United States and China are a pair of the greatest strategic competitors in the world, but people often ignore one point that is the United States and China are also the largest collaborators in the world.
I would say definitely it helps me understand more on how to think or interpret when I see all of the news headlines and understand a lot of the smaller nuances.
I think one big misconception is that avenues for more peaceful relations are possible. I also think that people-to-people connections are often overlooked in terms of how valuable they can be for the bilateral relationship and also to advance environmental and climate goals.
So anywhere from economic, security, technology.
Business community, scholars, scientists, and all kinds of communities from two countries actually putting big efforts to create more opportunities for two sides to collaborate.
While certainly competition is inevitable, I think there's a lot of room for U.S. and China to come together for global governance that benefits everyone in this world.
And finally, hope everyone, please, enjoy this year's annual conference. And thank you so much.
And thank you to all our interns who continue and appreciate your curiosity on these bilateral relations. I'm also reminded of the broader community that supports ICAS, our partners, collaborators, and friends who make this work possible. I think your support gives life to everything we do here today. And then I want to say a warm welcome and thank you to our co-organizers, the National Institute for South China Sea Studies, the Carter Center, and the Institute for China-Europe Studies, and certainly to all of today's speakers and moderators for lending your time and experience insight to this conversation. With that, I think it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Wu to deliver his opening remark. Dr. Wu, you have been every single year of our annual conference, you know him very well, but as you want to introduce him as the chair of ICAS Advisory Board and also the founding president of the National Institute for South China Sea Studies, he's quite well-known scholar on maritime studies, particularly on the South China Sea. Dr. Wu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Nong. Respectful Minister Chu Wenxing, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear friends. It's a real pleasure to join you today at the ICAS. Dr. Nong just mentioned the ICAS 2025 annual conference. As we are gathering here to discuss one of the defining questions of our time, charting the future U.S. China relations in an era of global alignment. Fortunately, this year's annual event is significant and timely. Just yesterday, Beijing time, and last night, Washington time, our two presidents, President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump, met in South Korea to discuss a lot of key issues we concerned facing both our two countries: trade tariffs, fentanyl, even rare earths. So I think Minister Xi might look at this issue among their meetings. So let me back to our event. Every year, this conference gives us a reason to pause and reflect on where the world's most consequential bilateral relationship is heading. And every year, I'm reminded that dialogue, especially in uncertain times, is not just putting ashore or a luxury party, but a responsibility and a sacred mission to stabilize our bilateral relationship from think tank perspectives. Over the years, I have come to review China-U.S. relations not just through the lens of diplomacy or ideology, but through the waters of the South China Sea, that I have been focusing on this issue for more than 3 decades. The South China Sea is an area where global power competition and regional interdependence coexist in the world vivid way. For decades, I have studied and witnessed how this body of rocky water has become both a testing ground and a barometer of China-US interaction. In the South China Sea, sovereignty claims overlap, national pride runs deep, and the greater power strategy meets international law. Yet, beneath all that, it remains a shared sea, one that connects rather than divides the region. When I look at China-US relations today, I see similar paradox. We talk about a rivalry, but we are bound by geography, economics, and global responsibility. We compete intensely, yet the world expects us to cooperate on issues that no single nation can handle alone. Climate change, maritime safety, biodiversity, even AI governance, stabilizing global trade, economic recovery. With regard to South China Sea issue, I would like to say a few words more. Due to the geopolitical competition between China and the United States and the maritime dispute between China and the claimed states in terms of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei, the South China Sea now has emerged as a theater of political, economic, and security concerns, not only for the countries in this region, in the South China Sea region, but for the world at large. Contrary to conventional wisdom, in my opinion, South China Sea issue is not about contestation over territory or control over resources alone. With facilities including artificial islands, airstrips, or structures being built in the area, concerns about freedom of navigation, that is the biggest concern of the United States and its allies, and the innocent passage have become an overwhelming concern for the world. So according to many academic research, this could lead to conventional confrontation or conflict between China and its and the United States and allies. So in this sense, it is not only a geopolitical hotspot, but also a mirror reflecting the broader state of China-US relations: uneasy, uncertain, complex, competitive. Sometimes this bilateral relationship appears intense rivalry or hostility, but still far from hopeless or completely decoupled. Through years of field research, negotiation, observations, and quite attractive dialogues like us, I have learned one enduring truth: the South China Sea is not destined to be a flashpoint. It can remain a sea of peace, cooperation, and coexistence. If we keep channels of communication open and allow common interests to prevail over mutual suspicion between China and the United States. That the same principle applies to U.S.-China relations. We may always see eye to eye, but dialogue anchored in facts, law, and mutual respect. It is only the way to prevent misunderstanding, misjudgment from heading into confrontation or conflict. When we sit with my American colleagues, I often remind them China's rise in the maritime domain is not a zero-sum ambition. It is about national security, maritime access, connectivity, and maritime environmental protection. China is a stakeholder, not a spoiler, in regional and global maritime governance. And when we in China talk about a maritime dispute, it is not about shutting others out. It is about establishing a regional order that is fairer, more balanced, and truly multilateral. For instance, the DOC signed between China and ASEAN countries in 2002, and also the COC consultation negotiation since 2016, soon after the arbitration ruling was issued. Now, China and ASEAN countries have completed the third reading of the textbook of the COC. Should be completed by end of next year, if everything is going smoothly. If there is one area where we continue to see hope, it is in science. In the South China Sea, cooperative initiatives in marine research, environmental monitoring, and disaster response capability building have shown that shared knowledge can sometimes achieve what politics and geopolitical competition cannot. Over the years, Chinese and international scientists, including American counterparts, have collaborated through regional and global research networks on issues such as marine biodiversity, coral reef protection, ocean acidification, even when official political dialogue has been difficult. That spirit of collaboration, pragmatic, political, human, should guide us in broader China-US relations. So we need to rehumanize this relationship. Let experts, chapter dialogue participants, young scholars, and the private sector continue the work sustainably, that politics and gray zone approach too often interrupts. As the chairman of the board of ICAS, I take a great pride in what ICAS has built over the past decade. We set up ICAS here in Washington, D.C. since 2014, so far 11 years. ICAS has earned a reputation as we are small, but a credible platform for balanced, research-based dialogue. Our strength lies in our independence and in our ability to convince voices from both sides of the Pacific who are willing to listen as well as to speak. Looking ahead, I hope ICAS will continue to deepen its roots in maritime studies where law, policy, and strategy intersect, and at the same time broaden its research into now new domains of global governance, including trade, technology, climate change, areas to which ICAS has been long devoted. We must keep building intellectual bridges when political ones are under repair, and remind both countries that engagement, even limited engagement, still matters. In my career, both official career, because I even was working in the government, for the government, and also in academic career. I have seen tempers flare, negotiations stall, and optimism faded. Let me give you 3 examples, negative examples, which were happening between China and the United States. Number 1 is EP3 event. It was taking place in April 1st, 2001. I'm personally, deeply involved, engaged in dealing with this incident. The second one is August 2022. U.S. House Speaker Pelosi visited Taipei. And the third one is January 2023, the Peru incident. So those negative incidents caused both sides, either suspended high-level communication mechanism or suspended such communication mechanism, particularly meal-to-meal communication. Yet, I have also seen how perseverance, dialogue, and professionalism can slowly rebuild trust, drop by drop, step by step. So as we look at the future of China-US relations, I would choose cautious optimism, not a blind optimism, but the belief that the two nations, with centuries of wisdom behind them, can find a way to coexist, to compete responsibly, and to cooperate where humanity demands. Now, let me thank you all, my dear friends, colleagues, old friends, new friends, for being here today. Your presence affirms that thoughtful discussion is still possible, hopeful, useful, and that mutual understanding, people-to-people exchanges, though difficult, sometimes even impossible, is always worth pursuing and insisting. Finally, thank you very much for your attention. Wish our dialogue a great success.
Thank you, Dr. Wu, for your very kind words about ICAS and also the great wishes for today's conference. And I also appreciate that you share your insights on how you view the U.S.-China relation through the angle of South China Sea. Okay, now please join me in welcoming Minister Chu Wenxing from the Chinese Embassy in the United States to come to the stage to deliver his keynote. And this keynote speech will be moderated by Professor Gordon Holden. He's a good friend and a longtime valuable member of ICAS, and he's also the Emery Director of the China Institute, University of Alberta from Canada. Welcome.
I want to express my thanks to ICAS, to Dr. Wu, and to the organizers of this conference. It's also my great honor to be able to introduce our featured speaker, Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission Chu Wenxing, whom I met, I think, last year, who arrived in his position in 2024. Chu Wenxing has a distinguished career within the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, particularly focused on North America. He has had an assignment in Australia as the third secretary, and then took progressively more senior positions within the Foreign Ministry in Beijing, Deputy Division Director, Counsel in the Department of North American and Oceanian Affairs, and the Department of International Organizations and Conferences, before advancing the position of Deputy Director General within the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Chu, I now invite you to deliver your remarks, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I am very glad to attend the annual conference of Institute of China-American Studies, hold dialogues with Director Holden, and meet with friends, both new and old here. I would like to thank Executive Director Nong for the kind invitation. I remember vividly that when attending last year's annual conference, I was asked questions about the President's invitation to President Xi to attend the inauguration ceremony. Then I replied very briefly, copying the American counterparts' practices. I either denied nor admitted. And then my response was widely reported by many media immediately after that. It brought me a wave of attention, to be frank. And even my parents made some comments on how I could improve my performance when interviewed. So I'm very happy this year. This annual conference is held after the meeting between the two presidents in Busan. I feel less pressure this time. And for the past 2 weeks, the world has witnessed 2 major events. First, the 4th plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee successfully concluded. This session is crucial to China's development over the next 5 years and even longer. Second, President Xi Jinping and President Trump held their first face-to-face meeting in Busan during President Trump's second term. The meeting is crucial to the future development of China-U.S. relations. I know everyone here is paying close attention to China-U.S. relations, but a better understanding of this relation requires a better understanding of China. Therefore, let me first take some time to provide some interpretations on the 4th plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee. This session mainly summarized China's development achievements during the 14th five-year plan period and adopted the recommendations of the Central Committee of the CPC for formulating the 15th five-year plan for national development and economic development. This is a grand blueprint for China's economic and social development over the next 5 years, and it also demonstrates China's aspiration for mutually beneficial cooperation with the world. Ambassador Xie has already made comprehensive interpretations on 2 separate occasions. Here, please allow me to make some ad for my embassy. You can see the details of the speeches by Ambassador Xie at our embassy's website. I'm not going to provide the exact address of the embassy. You can look. Here, I would like to offer my perspectives with you through 3 key words. The first is continuity. Achieving socialist modernization is a step-by-step, progressive historical process. China will strive to achieve basic socialist modernization by 2035 through 3 five-year plans. The 14th, the 15th, and the 16th five-year plan, realizing the first step of our 2-step strategic arrangement. The key to the success of China's modernization lies in the strategic stability and policy continuity maintained in its 5-year plans. The 15th five-year plan will be seamlessly linked up with the 14th five-year plan, forming the work pattern of painting a blueprint till the end, continuously deploying long-term development goals and ensuring that major projects launched during the 14th five-year plan period receive sustained funding, policies, and resource guarantees, ensuring their smooth completion and effectiveness. The second is certainty. The guiding principles, main objectives, and strategic deployments proposed in the 15th Five-Year Plan recommendations are very clear and consistent. China will adhere to the principle of revitalizing the country through industry, building a modern industrial system, and consolidating and strengthening the foundation of the real economy. China will adhere to innovation-driven development, accelerate high-level technological self-reliance, and lead the development of new productive forces. China will adhere to common prosperity, address the urgent needs and concerns of the people, promote high quality and full employment, improve the income distribution system, provide education that satisfies the people, improve the social security system, promote high-quality development of the real estate market, and accelerate the construction of healthy China. There are many other points, but here I want to emphasize, all in all, I believe China's development is unstoppable. The third is opportunity. During the 14th Five-Year Plan period, China's GDP successively surpassed three major milestones: 110 trillion, 120 trillion, 130 trillion yuan, contributing over 30% to global economic growth for more than a decade. China's economy expands 5.2% year-on-year growth in the first three quarters this year, despite domestic and external difficulties. In 2024, China's national express delivery volume reached 174.5 billion pieces, averaging 478 million pieces per day. You can say it equals to every American, sending a package or delivery, more than one piece every day. So China also accelerated its high-level opening up, provided zero tariff treatment on 100% of tariff lines to all least developed countries having diplomatic relations with China. Looking forward to the 15th Five-Year Plan period, China's economy has a solid foundation, numerous advantages, strong resilience, and great potential. The supporting conditions and basic trends for long-term positive growth remain unchanged, and the advantages of the socialist system with Chinese characteristics, super-large market, complete industrial system, and abundant human resources will become even more prominent. China's door to the world will open wider and wider. China will continue to unleash the dividends of development, share our market and investment opportunities with countries around the world, and welcomes all parties to board China's development express. To be frank, to invest in China is to invest in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, after understanding China's development direction and goals, we can conclude that a favorable external environment is conducive to China's development. A steady, sound, and sustainable China-U.S. relationship is beneficial not only to both countries, but also to the world at large. The meeting between the Chinese and U.S. presidents in Busan on October 30, that is last night, sent a clear signal that China will consistently handle bilateral relations in accordance with the three principles, that is, mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and mutually beneficial cooperation. This is not only a profound summary of the experience gained in the course of China-U.S. relations, but also the correct way for the two countries to get along with each other in the new era. We should respect each other and treat each other as equals. The success of China and the U.S. is an opportunity, not a challenge for each other. And the Earth is big enough for us to develop respectively and prosper together. The two sides need to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, respect each other's choice of development path and development rights, and respect each other's core interests and major concerns. No country can fantasize about suppressing and containing China while simultaneously developing good relations with China. We should coexist peacefully and avoid confrontation. China and the U.S. are permanent members of the UN Security Council, the world's two largest economies and nuclear powers. The consequences of conflict and confrontation between China and the U.S. are unbearable for any country and would bring enormous disaster to the world. President Xi Jinping pointed out in his phone call with President Trump earlier this year that confrontation and conflict should not be an option for the two countries. Both China and the U.S. are important countries in the Asia-Pacific region, which is where their interests are mostly intertwined and where interactions are most frequent. It is crucial for both sides to clearly define the boundaries of their actions. China proposed years ago that China and the U.S. should explore rules for interaction in the Asia-Pacific region. We hope for a positive response from the U.S. We should cooperate for mutual benefit and jointly meet challenges. China and the U.S. share extensive common interests and a broad space of cooperation. There are many areas where the two sides should and can cooperate, including in areas such as illegal immigration, fentanyl control, telecom fraud, financial crime, cancer prevention and control, infectious diseases, and artificial intelligence. Both sides should develop a long list of cooperation, which is in the interests of both peoples and meets the expectation of the internal community. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, the two heads of state have already navigated the course for the development of bilateral relations. At the strategic level, we hope the U.S. side could meet the Chinese side halfway to implement the important consensus reached by the two presidents. To this end, I would like to offer several policy suggestions at the operational level. First, respect for facts should be the premise. During our exchanges with our U.S. counterparts, to be frank, both sides are very professional and diplomatic, and the discussions are quite thorough. However, the biggest difficulty is, according to my personal observation, is that regarding the same question and incident, the two sides sometimes offer totally opposite characterizations. Just one example. On October 12, a Philippine vessel illegally entered the waters near Tiexian Reef in China's Nansha Qundao. It repeatedly made dangerous maneuvers and passed the bow of the Chinese vessel, which was on the normal cruising, resulting in a collision. The video footage released by the China Coast Guard clearly showed this. However, even with such clear facts, the U.S. still publicly issued a statement condemning China for colliding with the Philippine vessel. Such confusion of right and wrong inevitably results in each side sticking to their version of events. There are so many other examples like this. If the two sides cannot communicate based on basic facts, we cannot reach consensus no matter how many times we communicate. Second, enhancing exchange should be the right approach. China and the U.S. once had established over 100 dialogues and exchange mechanisms across various fields, but very few are still operational now. This is unimaginable for two major countries. During the President's Summit in Busan, the two presidents agreed to enhance communications. And during Foreign Minister Wang Yi's meeting with the Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Kuala Lumpur in July, both sides agreed to step up communication and dialogue across various fields and at all levels, including the diplomatic channel. We hope the U.S. would actively implement this consensus. Based on my experience of working in the U.S., I can feel that some people in the U.S. are very cautious about or even afraid of their interactions with the Chinese side. Maybe the only things in the U.S. about China without any controversy are pandas and Chinese food. Communicating with the Congress actually is one of my tasks. During the last 14 months I stay in the U.S., I have met with several dozen of members of Congress. But this is far from enough compared to the total of 535 members of Congress. And I offered many times to meet with China Select Committee. And up to now, I have met one member of the committee, but the rest of them, non-successful yet. So I hope that more and more people from all walks of life in the U.S. will strengthen their exchanges with the Chinese side, visit China more frequently to experience a real and comprehensive China. Thirdly, eliminating obstacles should be the guarantee. Here, I would like to emphasize the issue of harassment of Chinese students and scholars by U.S. law enforcement personnel. We have handled many such cases this year. Some Chinese students holding valid U.S. visas had faced selective and discriminatory enforcement upon arrival in the U.S. Some students had even been detained for more than 80 hours and unjustly deported at last. Some Chinese scholars conducting normal studies and research in the U.S. had been arbitrarily halted or even detained. At this time, there are quite a few still in the U.S. detention centers. The Chinese government attaches great importance to protecting the legitimate rights and interests of its citizens overseas, and has lodged representations with the U.S. side for every such incident. We urge the U.S. side to view personnel exchanges between the two countries correctly and to take measures to promote rather than hinder mutual understanding between the two peoples. Friends, developing sound China-U.S. relations is a mutually beneficial situation for both China and the U.S., and for the world as a whole. It requires the advocacy and action of people from all walks of life to promote our relations. I thank the Institute of China-America Studies for its important role in this regard, and I hope that everyone present today will continue to care about and support the development of China-U.S. relations. And during my dialogue with my U.S. counterparts, I always urge them to do the right things instead of the politically right things. It's not easy, but we have to make a choice. I am willing to work with you all to make efforts to explore the correct way for China and the U.S. to get along with each other in the new era. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Minister Cho. As Dr. Wu noted, while we were asleep last night, auspiciously perhaps, I don't think this was planned by Dr. Hong months ago, that the Presidents Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump will be meeting in Seoul. It just happens that it occurred immediately before this conference. I wonder if you could give us your initial assessment of the results of that meeting, even if they're imperfectly known. What is your initial assessment, impression?
Of course, I follow very closely on the presidential summit in Busan because we believe at this moment the China-U.S. relationship is at a critical juncture. To go from here to more, deterioration, or we can get back to the right path. I think the presidential summit is very crucial in that regard. So I personally very pleased to see the outcomes of this summit. My first, impression is that the presidential summit in Busan is really constructive and productive. And the two presidents have reached the consensus on a wide range of issues to de-escalate from the trade war to cooperate on the issue of fentanyl. And China is going to buy American agricultural products, and the U.S. will, cancel 10% fentanyl tariff. I think there are many consensus already reached. So we would love to work with our U.S. counterparts because the presidents at the top level have already charted the course of this big ship of China-U.S. relations. We hope that our U.S. counterparts can work with us to implement the consensus, to translate the consensus into concrete policies and measures. But to be frank, personally, my personal view is that it's not going to be a smooth process. And we hope that there are still many challenges along the way and a lot of differences between our two countries. But we hope that if the two sides can hold the spirit of constructive managing the differences, we can overcome the difficulty. And we believe that it is in the interests of the two countries.
Thank you for that assessment. My next question really revolves on a broad set of issues, and that is, I think we can agree, intensifying rivalry and competition on high-tech issues. This can be chips, it can be space. How do you believe, Minister Cho, that Beijing and Washington can manage the complexities of this rivalry with positive outcomes, perhaps for both?
And, on the nature of China-U.S. relationship, we have noticed that this relationship is defined by competition or rivalry or, adversary. But in our mind, we believe that China and the U.S. should and could be partners, if not friends, because we share extensive common interests and there are vast areas of cooperation for the two countries to explore. Actually, when I first saw the term of competition raised by our U.S. counterparts years ago, I was reluctant, and I'm still reluctant to accept using the term competition to define China-U.S. relationship. We believe actually the theme of this relationship is mutually beneficial cooperation. Competition in some field may be the case, but there should be some rules for the two sides to follow. That is to compete to make a better world, to compete to make better lives for our two countries. And to compete for such goals, the two countries actually need to cooperate with each other and not put some limits and restrictions on exports. And That is something, I believe that if the two sides can, perceive each other in a constructive manner, this relationship will have developed more smoothly. But right now, I believe that's why we hope that we welcome more and more American friends to visit China, to see a real China. And there are many misinformation on China in the U.S. I once said, maybe not correct or maybe not accurate, but China maybe is the most demonized country in the U.S. We hope that a objective perception on China, will be formed in the near future.
Thank you, Minister. My third question really is a broad one. I think we can safely say that in this 21st century, both China and the United States have global responsibilities. There are tensions, whether it can be in Central Europe, it can be in Middle East, tensions where both countries will have a role to play, but also tensions between the United States and China. One could say perhaps more intensively in East Asia, in the South China Sea. What do you think can be done by Washington and Beijing to manage these inevitable tensions that already exist and may intensify? What can be done in terms of Chinese diplomacy, U.S. diplomacy, in your view, to address these issues?
I do believe that there are many areas of cooperation for the two countries to explore, not only bilaterally, but multilaterally, and of course across the global stage. And at this moment, I think, the best thing for China and the U.S. can do is to stabilize the bilateral relations, because many other countries are looking upon China and the U.S. If the relationship can maintain, stable on the whole, and it will inject, stability and uncertainty into the global affairs. And if the two countries, compete or even, fight with each other, and the other countries may be forced to choose sides, and then there might be, parallel system, international system, to be formed. This is not in the interest of everyone. So we hope that the two presidents' meeting has already, provide a good start and already provide strategic guidance. And we hope that, following through the consensus, the two can, renew or establish new mechanisms of dialogue to translate, the consensus into actions. And I think, the two teams at different agencies, they can get in touch with each other and to see, what they can do to follow through the consensus. And in the Asia Pacific, I believe that the APEC meeting, is coming. We hope that China and the U.S. should not, criticize each other during the meeting, and instead the two sides can focus on, areas such as energy, such as, environmental protection, such as disaster relief, and to provide international common products to the region and to the world. That will be welcomed by all sides across the world.
Thank you, Minister. We've now reached the point where we can entertain questions from the audience. We have two microphones, one on either side. And I'd ask that you queue at the microphones and that you identify yourself and your organization. If you could proceed to the microphone. The advantage of going there is that we could all hear the question as well as the minister's response. And I ask that if your questions could be succinct. Please.
Thank you, Minister Chiu. My name is Huifeng Chan. I am a Chief Strategy Officer for Canadian Solar. U.S. is building up manufacturing, and Chinese companies with the know-how and equipment, technology play a major role in the U.S. About 2 months ago, we saw announcement from the Chinese government about restriction of certain technology in battery, solar, etc. And people in the industry, like myself, have some question. What is the overall policy orientation from the Chinese government on the issue of Chinese companies setting up manufacturing in the U.S. and to build up a supply chain in the U.S.? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Actually, I, of course, noticed the latest development, for China put extra control on some technology and on some China's products. Actually, it is an endeavor to improve the Chinese export control system. And it is to safeguard China's national security, and it is to fulfill the international obligations of non-proliferation, especially in the field of rare earths. And we are glad to see that during the presidential summit, the two sides reached some consensus on some of the toughest issues. And of course, actually, we encourage Chinese companies to invest in the U.S. because we believe that investment is mutually beneficial. And if Chinese companies come to the U.S. and then they invest, they will promote and increase the local employment and to promote the economic growth. But frankly, right now, because of the deterioration in China-U.S. relationship, many Chinese companies are very cautious to make that decision. 2 years ago, a very famous Chinese automaker, a general manager came to my office. He told me that his company, was always looking for opportunities to invest in the U.S. But since 2018, the trade war, erupted. They, held that decision, and then they moved to Mexico, and some other Latin American countries. But they were still interested in the U.S. So in the year 2023, he came to my office seeking my advice. To be frank, at that time, my advice is be careful on the decision because you don't know the political atmosphere. Wait for the right moment. Wait for the improvement in China-U.S. relationship. Actually, that automaker is very, very famous. It's very big, and it's internationally competitive in global markets. But right now, I think they are not in a position to invest here. So we hope that the U.S. government could send a clear signal to welcome Chinese companies here. But right now, we have seen that the presidential executive order, the legislations introduced by many states here, putting limits and, restrictions, that really produced a chilling effect on many, many Chinese companies. So we hope that this situation could be improved in the near future. We have seen that President Trump once said he welcomed Chinese companies to invest here. We hope that, this kind of words could be translated into concrete actions.
Thank you, Minister. Michael Swain, please.
Thank you, Minister Cho. My name is Michael Swain. I'm a senior fellow at the Quincy Institute here in Washington. I wanted to ask your views on a certain issue that was talked about before the Trump-Xi summit, and that's Taiwan. There was a lot of discussion here in the United States and Taiwan that President Trump and President Xi might make some comment about Taiwan that would be different from the past. In particular, many Chinese have pressed the United States that the United States should make a statement saying it opposes Taiwan independence, does not support. And several people thought that that kind of a statement might indeed come out of President Trump's mouth. But they said, as far as we know, nothing has been said about the Taiwan issue. No discussion was said about it. So what is your general take on that? Why do you think the issue was never raised? It always usually has been raised in these types of meetings. wasn't raised this time. Why do you think it wasn't raised? What do you think the underlying situation is?
Thank you for the question. It's a tough one. Thank you very much. And of course, Taiwan issue is always there, and I say it is not one of the most sensitive. It's the most sensitive and the most explosive issue in China-U.S. relationship. And of course, I read the media statement on the presidential summit very carefully. I noticed Taiwan issue was not on the media statement. But to be frank, not on the media statement does not mean the two presidents, didn't exchange views on the issue of Taiwan. And to be frank, according to my experience, Taiwan issue is always on the agenda. Every time the leaders and even, at the working levels meeting. So I haven't read the minute myself because it just happened, 10 hours ago. And I believe my colleagues are working very hard on the minute, but right now I haven't seen. But on the issue, actually, our position has not changed at all. No matter it is not support Taiwan independence or oppose Taiwan independence, it is our, position. Always, we not only hope, but we urge our U.S. counterparts to take concrete measures to oppose Taiwan independence, because we believe, such a move is dangerous. It has the potential to drag China and the U.S. into a conflict. And that is something we try our best to avoid. And to be frank, actually, the U.S. made already commitment during the 3 China-U.S. communique. And there is one China principle, and of course, on the American side, it is one China policy. I still remember last year, I emphasized no matter it is one China principle or, one China policy, one China is always there. And that means there is only one China in the world. Taiwan is a part of China. And the PRC government is the only legitimate government representing China. So we hope that there are many, differences, related to the Taiwan issue. But we believe it's there since China-U.S. established diplomatic relations already 46 years. And on the whole, the two sides managed this sensitive issue, I believe, very constructively. And at least right now, it is not a flashing point, to make the two countries, fight each other. We hope that we can continue on that path, and we hope that the U.S. could respect our position and take, careful measures. And this issue, we believe that the two sides still have wisdom to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Cho, for your remarks, both formal and informal. You handled both substantive and sensitive issues, including very recent developments overnight in Korea, and I salute you for that. I now invite the group to thank you, Minister, for your contributions and presence today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you.